Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. I think we're on episode 93 or 94. Can't tell you. Can't remember at this point. But yeah, it's football's in full swing now. We had an interesting weekend of college and the NFL. It seems like I say that every week, but it's always true. And lots to talk about. But where I wanted to jump in was the amount of coaching malpractice this weekend, especially in college, was quite eye opening. I don't remember if there were a whole bunch of situations in the NFL that necessarily where I thought coaches were, completely ridiculous. But I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a full moon on Saturday or what happened, but my goodness, it was completely insane. So we'll start with University of Miami. University of Miami has they have a 3-point lead. There's 33 seconds to go when they snap the ball the last time. And instead of just taking a knee, which is the logical thing to do, you see it every week in every football game. When somebody has the game won, they just snap the ball to the quarterback. Quarterback takes a knee, clock runs out, end of game. Georgia Tech has no timeouts. Now, first of all, I just want to start here. Miami looked pretty pathetic in this game. I don't think they scored until nearly the end of the third quarter. Like, it was a really sad performance by the University of Miami for a team that has shown to be pretty good this year to be stinking it up against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech got blown out last week at home by Bowling Green. Okay? So for the University of Miami to lose, number one, to be in a dogfight with Georgia Tech in the fourth quarter, that's inexcusable in itself. But to lose this way, so they instead of taking a knee, they run the ball. The guy fumbles, which you're looking at the replay. I didn't think it was a fumble. It looked like the guy's elbow was on the ground, so the referees missed the call, but never mind that. And then they allow somebody to get behind the defense and Georgia Tech to throw a 50-yard pass to win the game for a touchdown. Instead of, they were up 3. It's just hold them to at least a field goal, and maybe you can get him in overtime. But they allow the guy to run all the way down to the end zone and score. And it's just like, it's one of those things, Clark. I'm watching it going, whatever. And I couldn't believe it. I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, it was the craziest thing. I was screaming. I was like, what's going on here? It was just a freak show. And then the other one that blew my mind, I mean, I was obviously the worst. That's one of the worst coaching decisions I've ever seen in my life.
Tim Hasselbeck, who was calling the game for ESPN, said that's one of the worst coaching blunders I've ever seen at this level. So he was talking about college.
And he was saying it before the play happened. He was like, why aren't they taking a knee? Like, why do they keep running the ball? Like, this makes no sense. And I've heard all these reasons why. And it's like, well, they wanted the running back to get over 100 yards, and and I'm just going, like, that better not be the reason. Like, that better not be true. Like, that's all I could say. Because, and the thing is, to set the scene here, like, Mario Cristobal you look like, okay, University of Miami's moving in the right direction. They played well this year. They played Texas A&M earlier this year. They blew them out at home. They looked good. Like, we're thinking, okay, this is great. They're going to be undefeated. They're playing North Carolina next week. Like, it's all set up. They got to play North Carolina, Clemson. They could end up in the ACC championship game. Like, this could be an awesome season. And then they just completely fart out a loss like that. It was just I couldn't believe it. Like, you should be, like, honestly, if Mario Cristobal was less accomplished, if he hadn't just only been there, this is only his second year, like, if he'd been there a while, like, I would advocate, like, should this guy be fired? Like, should we talk about that? Because that was that bad. Like, and I'm not a let's fire the coach guy. That's not how I operate. But in this case, like, it's almost warranted. Like, you literally, I don't know how you stand. Like, you saw the tweet from Mike Lombardi. I don't know how Mario Cristobal stands in front of his team after that. It's like, dude, you literally lost us the game.
Yep.
Like, your stupidity literally cost us the game. So, the other one that just blew my mind was USC was in a dogfight with Arizona. It was late Saturday night, especially on the East Coast. And, it ended up going to overtime and USC ended up winning. But so USC gets the ball. It's a tie game. All right, they have the ball down near the end zone, right? So they're thinking, okay, run the clock down, kick a field goal, we'll win the game, no problem. The first down, USC tries to throw the ball. Which I'm just like, okay, it's one thing to throw the ball. Like, I get it. You don't want to, you don't have any. I think they still had a timeout left, so I don't know why they were worried about that. But they throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Guy gets tackled. I'm like, okay, why are we doing that? Number one. Number two, then the next play they try, it's like, okay, just kneel in the middle of the field to set up the kicker. And then they try to run a read option. Caleb Williams fumbles. Thank God he falls on it. Okay, so they get the ball back, and then they try to kick a field goal, and they screwed that up. The snap was high, and they couldn't get the kickoff, so they couldn't win the game. Now, thank goodness, Arizona was just moronic. I don't know why Arizona didn't go for two in the first overtime to win the game. So they got away with that one. I don't know how they managed to win that nonsense game, but it was one of those things I'm just like, I couldn't believe. I had hands on my head. I'm like, what are we doing? So just stupidity in that game. And then one that just, like, I know nobody noticed this unless you were watching the game, and nobody cares because Alabama ended up winning the game. But so Alabama, there's about a minute and a half to go. Okay, they get the ball back. Texas A&M, again, no timeouts. Okay, they snap, and I'm thinking, all right, just either take a knee or run the ball or whatever. They throw a pass. On the first play, he tries to throw a screen pass out to the wide receiver, throws the ball into the ground, so it's an incomplete pass. So the clock stops. I'm like, what are you, like, this is Nick Saban, for Christ's sake. What are you doing? Now, they ended up, they took a knee on the next two plays, and they punted the ball. They ended up winning. Thank goodness. Texas A&M's offense really sucked, especially in the second half. They weren't able to do anything. So they managed to win, but, I mean, literally, like, and they said it, Gary Danielson said it in the broadcast, I don't understand why they didn't take three knees and just go home. Like, why are we doing this? So I don't know what's going on with these coaches. When it's Nick Saban doing it, it's like, what are you doing? Like, it's horrific.
Yeah. Well, and those are obviously all, terrible. And the thing you got to remember is, and there's another one that I want to point out in the NFL that happened on Monday night, and the coach got bailed out. But the point I want to, which is actually perfect, because the point I want to make is, Jason Timpf on his podcast, Hoops Tonight, he often talks about, like, with NBA offenses, he's like, look at the process, don't look at the results. Did you have a good process? Because if you have a good process, a lot of times it'll work out. Sometimes it won't, but that doesn't mean it's a bad process. You can't just go by results, because the process of getting to the result may have been a bad process that if you keep doing it, if you repeat it, it'll cause you problems later, or it won't work and it'll cost you a game. Okay? So, like earlier this season, Brandon Staley got bailed out twice, because he made two bad calls, and, fortunately his defense bailed him out. But on Monday night, the Packers were playing the Raiders, right? So the Raiders are up 17-13, okay, late in the fourth quarter. McDaniels decides to try to kick like a 50-yard field goal. Or more than 50. It was like more, I think it was more than 50 yards. Okay? Now, let's think about this. If you make the field goal, you're up 7. Okay, the other team's going to have like 2 minutes to go. Now, granted, it's Jordan Love on the other side. We don't know if he's really any good yet. But still, they may be able to score a touchdown and take you to overtime. So you won't lose the game. But, I mean, you're not going to win the game there, okay? And then you got to think about what happens if you don't make it. Well, you're giving them good field position. And also, look at that game. The Packers had only scored 13 points. They were up 13-10 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. They didn't do anything else, okay? The rest of that quarter. Then they get the ball, but, Now, so anyway, the Raiders kick the field goal. They miss, so the Packers have good field position. Jordan Love ends up throwing an interception. The Raiders end up winning the game. But
right.
What's wrong with just punting the ball there? Make them drive the length of the field. Why would you give them extra? And also, in the context of the game, they only scored 13 points. But when they got to 13, they were at 10. They drove down, they got close to the goal line, and they still couldn't score. So to me, that says your defense against the Packers is pretty good, and the Packers are struggling to score. They also have not a rookie quarterback, but a quarterback who's starting for the first time in his career after being on the bench for 3 years. Okay? What's wrong with punting the ball? Just punt the damn ball away. Make them go down the field. If they go down the field and beat you, they go down the field and beat you. But I just find it so funny that, like, some of these coaches, they get into these situations where they go, okay, I'm going to push all my chips into the middle of the table. And a lot of times they do it, and it's like, well, this is not the time to do that, because this is not a do or die scenario. It's not like if you're, it's a close game and you score with like under, 30 seconds left and you're down there, you could decide to go for two and basically end the game. Okay, that's
Right.
a do or die scenario, and that I actually support. Because if you make it, you win the game. You don't have to worry about going to
But
overtime.
just to interrupt, though, the criticism that I've heard, like from the TV shows, because I didn't see the end of this game, was that they didn't go for it on fourth down.
Well, I mean, okay, maybe you could argue that would have been better because when you kick a field goal, you have to get back like 5
And
yards
I'm
from
on
the line.
I'm on your side. Like, I think you punt them deep and make them earn it. I totally agree with you. I'm not on the you should go for it, but but by the way, going for it is better than kicking a field goal. Like, to me,
Yeah,
number one would be punting. Number two would be go for it. The field goal will be last on my list.
yeah,
This is something that I've noticed for the last several years in football is these guys kicking long field goals, not understanding that, by the way, they get the ball right where you kick it.
yeah,
So if you're kicking a long field goal, you're giving them good field position. When you miss a field goal, it is a turnover. Like, I don't
yeah.
think people realize that. It doesn't get counted in the turnover column, but it is a turnover. So it's one of those things that's hidden in the game that people don't pay attention to. And yeah, I don't know who's teaching. Like, Mike Lombardi's been talking about this for years. Nobody's teaching these coaches the process of being a head coach and what game management is. Nobody's teaching them. These guys all know how to be good coordinators. Josh McDaniels knows how to be a good coordinator. No idea how to manage being a head coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, again, we'll keep talking about it. I'm sure we'll be talking about this for, you know, many episodes to come because these coaches just keep doing this shit.
And
In
it's
the
not
pro
even
and the
like
college level.
right, like going for it or not going for it. Like, those are okay, we can argue about that decision. The things that Alabama and USC and the University of Miami were doing, these are not arguable. These are obvious things that everybody knows you should do. So it's just like
Well, and
I couldn't
I'll give you
believe it.
another example where I'm kind of on the fence about it. So the Titans were down 20-16 to the Colts,
Right.
right? The
Right.
Titans are driving. They were pretty deep in Colts territory, so a field goal would have been pretty much a gimme at that point, right? And if you kick the field goal, you're down one. So then, if you get the ball back and you score a touchdown, get a 2-point conversion, you could tie the game, go to overtime, right? But Vrabel decided to go for it. They didn't get it, and then the Colts went down the field. They kicked a field goal, and then I think Tannehill threw an interception. Right.
Right.
I think that was how that game ended. So that one, I can kind of defend going for it on fourth down. Because I mean, you got all the way down there. Maybe you don't think you're going to get down there again. And you still had another shot. Because if you held them to a field goal, then okay.
Right.
So that's one of those where I can be on the fence about it. But some of these other decisions, it's like, guys, you're literally putting your team, like, people, and I think a lot of fans don't understand this. It's like you're literally putting your team in a position where you could lose the game, or you're making it much more likely that you're going to lose the game. So, but people are so obsessed with like, oh, well, if he got it, well, what if you don't get it? As the head coach, you have to think about what happens if I don't get the fourth down. So, anyway.
Yeah. So a lot of coaching malpractice this weekend is what I'm calling it. Coaching malpractice. It was a bit of a disaster in
Yeah.
some of these games.